Well, we're back again, and we're going to continue on with our design project. We should be able to make extreme progress today since we've been able to knock out several letters at a time each session since we began this. So we're going to continue on today. It looks like we're working on the letter E, and as we've seen before, the letter E up here is simply an easy split. So we simply have to take our ruler and orient it. We can actually find our little layout mark from our letter R previously and simply just put our ruler right on that, and we're going to with one horizontal mark, make sure you hold down your ruler firmly, split our E in half there. Now normally I would say we could go ahead and do this one, but we would have to measure, and sometimes people don't like to measure. However, now we're going to move on. We're going to make it easy on ourselves. So we're going to start with the letter C over here as our second letter. Now this is unusual because it has 5 stripes. If we look at our chart, our worksheet right here for the letter C, you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now a lot of times we like to cut things in half and cut them in half again. But in this case, with an odd number of stripes, we have to draw that middle stripe first, and then we can cut upper one in half and the lower one in half. And we'll come out with 5 uniform stripes. So we're going to need to do some measuring this time. So if we lay our ruler on the side of our box, if it's accurately drawn, we can make a mark, a registration mark, at 1.5. And then we're going to do the same thing over here on the other side of our box. We're going to measure down 1.5 inches, and maybe you need to be able to see that a little better, I suppose. And we're going to make a mark there too. Now, we're not going to draw a line on either of these marks. We are simply going to use them to help us decide where to put our first stripe at. So 1.5 inches down and 1.5 inches down. So we take our ruler and we line it up on our registration dots, but we have to draw that middle stripe first. The third stripe has to be drawn first, so we lower down a bit. And we got a good eye, and it needs to be level. And then we strike a darker mark. Now we're going to work on the bottom of our ruler. We're going to find our registration marks. We're going to raise it up just a bit, and we're going to compare it to the line, the distance we just drew. And by looking at that, it looks pretty accurate. We're going to go ahead and strike in our mark again. So now we have our third stripe, and it was drawn first in this case. Now we can simply estimate. We'll estimate half of this distance and half of this distance and put a registration dot. So easily done. We'll find our mark, make sure it's level with the other ones, parallel to these grid lines that separate each of the letters, and hold down the ruler firmly and strike our mark. We're going to do the same thing on the registration above where we were just at one moment ago. Now we've got to work, let's say, on the bottom of the ruler this time. We always want to be able to see what we've previously drawn whenever we're using a ruler, especially one that we can't see through. Sometimes a clear ruler is the best solution for this. However, for this video, it would be all shiny and it would be difficult to see anything really being done. So let's hold our ruler down firmly on our registration dots, and if we hold it down and we make a dark mark, we should be able to see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stripes, with the third stripe being drawn first, dead in the middle, and very attractive. So, moving on. Now see, we started with an easy letter, but then it immediately got difficult. Now moving on to the letter R, which we did up here, takes a little bit more time. But luckily we have dots that we can use as registration dots to help us index our lines. So in this case, we'll line up with the L that's directly above the letter R, and we'll very lightly draw a line that we'll use as a layout line. Now it needs to be parallel to the sides of the boxes, just like what we did over here. Now we'll also move up and we'll find our registration dot right there in the middle of the letter C that we used to help us draw that letter. Make sure it's nice and level, and in this case we'll draw a light line that we're going to erase later. So ironically, what we've really done is just reproduce the letter L, but in this case we're going to use those markings to create the letter R. So we simply turn our ruler and we find our registration or our index line and our layout line. We move it over a bit, trying to get an eye for about how wide it is up here. We're going to hold it down and draw a slightly darker line. We'll do that on the other side of our line as well. So we find our layout line, we move the ruler over a bit, find out where it's at, kind of compare it, make sure it's about the same distance. It looks about the same. And we'll draw a slightly darker mark. Now we'll simply do the same thing sideways, horizontally. We find our layout line, we draw it down, we pull it down just a bit. In this case, it looks like it might be just level with the bottom of the letter C over here. So sometimes you get these fortunate occurrences that keep you from having to work so hard. The design sometimes wants to make itself. So we strike our line. I'm going to bet if we do the same thing above it, it lines up like it was meant to be that way. And it seems like it was meant to be that way. So nice and level, parallel with the grid lines that you see below it and the layout line we made before we started. So our letter R is done again. Notice it's got the 4 little squares that help you see it, and those form one bigger square, so you know you've got it level and about the same thickness. So we carefully erase all this off because we drew it lightly and it can be erased easy. And these letters taking a little bit longer today because we've already had to draw several tough ones. But sometimes you got to go slower to go faster, and it's never a good idea to rush through something where accuracy is important, and also the finished product is a reflection on your own work habits. So let's move on here. See, we were able to do in the first day 4 squares, in the second day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares, and so far we've done 1, 2, and 3. So we should be able to make extreme progress here today. We're going to index for our letter E, which we happen to see over here, is quite simple and is right above the one we just were drawing in the previous row. So let's put our ruler. I'm going to turn my ruler around. I always like to look at the numbers right side up. Okay, we're going to put the ruler right on there. It is going to be parallel with the grid lines above it. We're going to index off of this dot from the letter R that we use to help getting it nice and level, and we're going to strike a horizontal line. Now we have got these 2 letters one above the other. It's really important that they should be very similar to each other, or it's going to be difficult to make it look attractive. So we're moving on to our next letter there. So today we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on our 5th letter. If we can get to the end of this row and maybe the letter D, it'll be a successful day. Well, we've got the letter A right above the letter A, and over here we've got another letter A. So it seems like the letter A is pretty popular, at least in this particular phrase. So we simply are going to index off of the halfway mark in the letter A that's above it, about right there. We place our ruler against that. We look at it carefully, making sure that it's accurate and that it's parallel to the grid lines down the sides. And then we strike our line and cut it in half. We can use our letter E, which also, strangely, these 2 are the exact same letters above each other. That is unusual. So we'll find our letter E here, and we're going to index off of that the dot that we use to make the notch in our A letter. So in this case, I'm going to find it and maybe put it about right here, although if we were really super uptight after we made that dot, we might index it off of this. And they look like they're pretty accurate if you ask me, so I'm going to leave them alone. So I'm going to pronounce that dot, lay my ruler on the dot, and draw carefully to the corner with a dark mark. The same thing to the lower corner as we're looking at it right here. Okay, progress is being made so far. We are moving in on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th letter in this case. Now the letter T is quite simple. It can be done 2 ways. You could lay your ruler in the middle of it, and you could draw a line on either side of it, and you would have 3 stripes without doubt. We can look at it right here, and you would have 3 stripes. but it really isn't going to be an accurate drawing, and it should be symmetrical so that it looks good. So the letter T being 3 uniform stripes, and if we know that we did our layout work properly, that our squares are 3 inches wide, we should be able to lay our ruler right on that bottom of that line on the grid and mark it at 1 and mark it again at 2. These are each 1 inch wide. We'll do the exact same thing at the top of this, and if we did our layout work properly, then we should be able to make our registration marks at 1 and 2, and we should be able to connect these together and create 3 uniform stripes, all of the same width. They need to be parallel to the lines. We should always be checking the horizontal and the vertical grid lines to make sure that our markings are accurate. And in this case, we should come out with the letter T, which is 3 vertical lines. It seems like we're getting a lot of this same letter above the other letter, right here, and also here and here, and here as well. That's odd. Well, it's just how the phrase is, but I like this phrase. So the letter E, once again, is only halfway down, and it's a horizontal mark. And so that we want this all to look uniform, we should be able to index off of this halfway mark for the E and this dot from the A. So if we lay that on there accurately, it looks to me like it's about in the right place. So, making sure that it's parallel to the grid line, hold the ruler down and strike a dark mark. That's fantastic. So we're making tremendous progress. In one day today, we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 letters in one day. Now, it is possible that we can get one more letter done today, and then we will really have done tremendous progress. And that letter is the letter D. Now, the letter D has got 2 skinny stripes on the top of it and a fat stripe in the middle of it. And because of that, we can use our ruler in a way that I was talking about for the letter T, but we'll actually duplicate what we see here in the letter D, which is the fat stripe in the middle. So, we simply are going to take our ruler and we're going to lay it horizontally, and we are going to estimate an even amount above it and below it, and we're going to be honest about it, and that looks pretty accurate. So we're going to hold that ruler down, and we're going to strike a horizontal line above it, and we're going to then manipulate ourselves around so we can hold the ruler down and strike a horizontal line below it. And then when we pull the ruler away, we'll notice that our letter D here, skinny, fat, skinny, represents exactly what we've seen here. No measuring required, and it's still attractive because it lines up with the grid lines. So, we've made extraordinary progress in just one day today. We will easily finish this in the next session, and then we can start coloring it at the next phase. So I will bold this line right here showing how far we got in one session again. So we've had basically 3 sessions, and we've made a great deal of progress in those 3 sessions. So it usually takes about 10 days to do one of these projects, and so we're well on our way through the 3rd day right now. And so be patient, and that's how this stuff is done. Thanks for your attention. We'll be back again to finish up this last row. Well, we're back again here to finish up the lettering, and then we'll also just start cleaning up some of our marks and prepare it for coloring, which would be the next step, which takes the longest of all of these projects, to be honest with you. So let's get back to where we left off. We've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to go, and some of these are quite simple, and so I think we should be able to finish this on what would normally be about the 3rd day of this project. Alright, now let's see. It looks like we've got a letter E, and the letter E is still the horizontal line like we've done so many times in these previous episodes of the letter E, and here as well. And since these two are near each other, it's really important that they very closely match each other. So in this case, since we can't really index off of anything over here, we're going to have to really just do some measuring. And so if we measure down from this vertical, or I mean from this intersection of lines, we'll put our about 1.5 is half the distance to 3 inches, and our square should all be 3 by 3 inches. So if we make a small registration mark right there, then that is halfway down, and it allows us to then accurately split this square with a horizontal line. And so it looks to me like that's pretty much level. So I'm going to go with that and strike a dark line. And so we're on our way again to completing our message. Now, oddly, the letter Q is one of the easier ones because, as you can see, the letter Q in this case has no markings whatsoever in it. If we were to look at this, the illustrated portion of this, you'll notice that it's actually it's a completely yellow square. In fact, I think I might be able to move that up there where you can see it a little bit closer. That's the letter Q right there. We'll be referencing this later when we do our coloring. So it looks like we did okay with the letter Q. We don't have to do any drawing there. So moving on, we've got the letter U, and we look through here, and there it is, and it very carefully or very closely mimics the letter L in this case. And so they're simply different colors, even though they use the same shape. And we'll be looking at that when we go through here and color it in. So we're lucky because right now we've got this halfway mark that we can index off of. So if we were to put just a dot there to show where it happens at, and then we line it up with both of these A's that are split straight down the middle. And so we accurately line that up, make sure it's parallel to the grid line to the right here, and then we're going to cut that in half, and with a nice solid line. So we've split it in half, and since it really is the same shape, simply different colors than the letter L, we'll just try to do the same thing sideways. Now we can index off of this letter E over here because we knew we went halfway up. We measured it, in fact. And so if we make sure that we're parallel to this line above our letter U, that grid line, then we should be able to accurately be able to place our line in here. So we just split it in half like this, and we're once again making progress. And so many times you don't have to measure if you can use a previous letter that was accurately measured. Now here we are again with all of these A's. This is very unusual that we're getting all of these A's. We do know that each one of the letters, the stripes in the letter T, is 1 inch wide. We could probably accurately estimate right in the middle of that middle stripe, since that's 1 inch, that should be the very middle of this letter, or this character A. So we will once again orient our ruler so it's straight up and down, or vertical and parallel to this line right here. Hold it down firmly and strike a mark. Now we've done the letter A previously, and so we notice there is a notch in the letter A. We've got to do the same thing here. Now in a previous portion of the letter A, we actually preceded it by E, and we were able to index off of that. In this case, we have the letter U, and that horizontal mark will give us a place that we can index off of. So we find this line right here, and then over here we're going to go about a ½ inch back, or we're going to just kind of eyeball it to about right here, I suppose. And that should be a good registration dot for us to rotate our ruler. And then we're simply going to orient it to the corner to make our notch, just like we have in the other letter A's. And we'll do the same thing in this direction as well, to the lower right hand corner. Now when we have letters that are matching each other, the same letter, and they're near each other, it's really important for the beauty of the project that they look very similar. So these do, these three do, okay, the letters E here and E here also, and of course the letters E over here and diagonal. So by using these methods, we're able to get symmetry, and it looks intentional the way it came out, like it was meant to be this way, rather than just however it came out. So we've only got one more letter, and that's the letter L. And we can use this line and this dot to index to split our letter L, because it's just like these here with the 4 quadrants in them, very much like the letter U as well. So we're going to lay it on here. We're going to find where the U and the notch in the A line up at, and we're going to hold our ruler down, making sure that it's parallel with this line. And hold it down firmly and strike a dark mark. And then we'll have to measure in this case, because there's nothing that we can index off of. So you could either accurately estimate, or you can simply use your ruler, turn it upside down, and we'll go to 1.5 inches and we'll make a dot right here. We can do the same thing on the bottom if you would prefer to do it that way. We lay it up against the bottom of the paper, and as you can see, it's 3 inches, so at 1.5 inches we would make a registration mark, and then we'll simply connect our dots, and we can then have our letter L. So now in 3 sessions, by using our worksheet, we've been able to figure out what letters and characters we need to put onto our message, the shapes. And so we spelled out all people are created equal. Now we're going to go back and we're going to clean some of our work up in order to make sure that these markings do not show through our artwork when we begin to color it with colored pencils. And we're going to use red, yellow, blue, black, and white to color this project in. We will be leaving the letters in these little corners in until just before we color them. And that's so that we don't accidentally get the wrong colors and potentially misspell our project. And once it's colored wrong, and it must be colored very darkly or opaquely, it will be very difficult to fix it at that time. And so it's important to just work slow and accurately, not fast and recklessly. No one gets any prizes for getting done fast, only for getting done good. And so I'm examining my artwork for some more erasings that I'm going to clean up here, and just this little bit of extra time that you spend is what makes the work really come out much more attractive to people. And our goal as artists and as art students is to create work that people enjoy looking at, or at least will get their attention so that they look at it for a lengthy period of time. That's what art is. It's communication. It's simply trying to get an audience of some sort to look at and try to understand what you're explaining to them. And in this case, we're trying to explain to them with colors and shapes that we have a message. And that message would be, all people are created equal. So, if you're doing this e-learning style, in the next session, we will begin to color this in. And that should take a few sessions as well. Normally, if you're in a physical classroom with me instructing right in front of you, this would take about 10 days from the time that we first start gridding out the paper and the time that we have finished the coloring, and then we would grade it. So, we're done here for now. In the next session, we will continue on and we'll begin coloring it. And that's what will happen for the next several sessions of 6th grade art, the design project. So we'll be coming back to this, and we'll be coming back to this as well as we do our coloring. We will also be coming back to the fact that you will need to get out of your colored pencil kits the red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And remember that only G, L, I, and Z will be colored black. That's what we put over here with the circles. Okay, let's stop for now, and we will resume here briefly. Well, welcome back. We're going to today finish cleaning up our 6th grade design project, and we're going to begin coloring it as well. And usually we'd be into about the 4th or 5th day of our instruction by now. and we would have already got this portion of the project done, and that's a good progress. So the remainder of the time simply is coloring it opaquely and using the colors that we've put together for this over the years, which is going to be red, yellow, blue, black, and white. These are the traditional colors that we actually see in the flags. And so only red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And that way it also allows us to break up a colored pencil kit so that the other students in other classes are given other colors of their own. Just for example, these are the colors that the 6th grade uses in this column, and of course the 7th grade here for their project, similar to the 6th grade project. And then the 8th graders get a different variety of colors as well. And by doing that, we're able to take a Crayola 24-pack of colored pencils and extend it so that everybody at all grade levels gets to have colored pencils that they get to select from, rather than always trying to find the exact same colored pencil all the time. So we're going to use these colors that we see here, and we're going to color in our message so that it spells out, like we did in the last session, all people are created equal, which is 24 characters. What we are doing is a visual, graphic message, not necessarily one that is spelled out in English letters. So you need to get out of your colored pencil box red, yellow, blue, black, and white. Now only G, L, I, and Z have black in them, with the exception of the letters A and B on our flag chart, and on our worksheet it shows these as being black also. In reality, what there is a notch cut out of those flags, and since we don't want to cut a hole in the artwork, we simply are going to represent that with a black triangle. So I'm looking through my colored pencil box right here, and this is a typical Crayola 24-pack of colored pencils that I use regularly, and it looks like I may be missing my black colored pencil. There it is. Okay, good. We need that one. And for the 6th graders, so we'll be using black. We'll be using royal blue. It says blue right on the end of the pencil there as well, so please use that instead of any other blue. Now if you're not using Crayola pencils, you want to get something as close to royal blue as possible, and you'll see that once I start coloring what color we're looking for there. Also red, not to be confused with red orange, and so also red is written right here on this, and sometimes in Crayola pencils it's written in more than one language, so you get a little bit of a foreign language experience there as well. We want to use yellow, which literally says yellow, not golden yellow or any other type of yellow, but regular true yellow. So we got red, yellow, blue, and black, and we will take out the white colored pencil. If we should get so far as to get the entire project colored in, we will go back and we will color in the white areas white. Paper will oxidize over periods of time, and so what would happen is that your paper would get dingy in the areas where it should be white. If you use white colored pencil or white paint when you're making a painting, then that will not happen. It will always stay bright for mounting and or for even framing. It will look good and will always stay that color. Alright, so what we've got to do now is look at our color chart here. Normally we would have put this onto this worksheet, so everybody would have their own individual worksheet. If this were a physical class, then you would have already done this, and we would not have a limited supply of these small reference pictures right here. So we're going to look at what we've got there, and we've got the letter A to start with, and if we were to, let me pick this up so that you can see it, but the letter A is blue and white, so it's blue on the right and white on the left. So you can simply believe me when I say this because I happen to know that, but these flags are easy for me to see from where I'm at, but not easy for you to see. That's why normally I would make you all do your own worksheet. Now the 7th graders will have to do their own worksheet in this particular project. So we take our eraser, we're going to erase this letter just before we color it in. If you erase it first, a lot of times what happens is mistakes are made, you color the wrong color in, it's not easy to get it out. So in this case we're going to just skip over the white area for right now, and we'll come back to it later. And we'll start by coloring in our royal blue, and we want to hug it up tight to the line. Now I color fast, and here's some tips You wouldn't think that you have to think about coloring, but you do. And one of the things I would tell you to do is constantly roll the pencil in your fingertips. By doing this, you will always keep a sharp point on it, and it will cause it to last longer. Now, you want even but firm pressure. If you bear down too hard, what will happen is you'll just snap the tip of the pencil off, and then you'll spend almost all of your time sharpening the pencil over and over again. And that really is no way to do your work. Now, you'll also notice that I am working from the left to the right, since I am a right-hander, and by doing this, I don't drag my arm or my hands through the work. Your hands can get dirty, and on the back of them, and I'm sure many of you have noticed this, you get a bunch of filth on the back of your hands when you are making artwork. So it's a good idea to work in such a manner so that you don't drag your hand through your work if you can avoid it. Sometimes you have to turn the work upside down, or you need to walk around it in some manner or another in order to get a better angle on it. Now, when coloring, it's best really to not have any pattern left behind when you do your coloring. So that causes a more smooth appearance to your coloring to appear. Now, a lot of people want to get done fast instead of good, and because of that, they end up with strike marks that are very obvious in their work. When you're attempting to get opacity, which is the idea that something is so dark that you can't see any white paper showing through, then it's important to not have that pattern form. Now, if you just happen to like that, that's a different story. That's something you would have to explain to other people. But in this case, it takes a little bit of time to get the level of opacity by varying the strike mark of the pencil back and forth so that we get a nice dense royal blue color. Now, also, we'll be using black next, and when you're confronted with the potential to have to use two colors and one of them is black, you should try to color the lighter color first. And you'll see the reason for this when we get to the black portion, but I'll explain it briefly. And that reason is, let's say we'll be doing the letter L, and that would be the next letter after this. The letter L is yellow and black. If you color the black first, and then as you color the yellow colored pencil should snag some of that black. It will smear it into the yellow portion of your artwork, and it will be visible, and it's very difficult to fix it. Now, if we colored the yellow first and the black colored pencil second, if the black colored pencil should snag some of the yellow, it will simply smear a little bit of yellow into the black, but no one will ever notice that. So a lot of what you will learn by making art and coloring opaquely and going slow and good rather than fast and reckless is that there is kind of an order of operations to what you do when you make a piece of design work. And if you don't want to have to redo it, or it ends up not looking like the way you thought it would, it could be because, you know, the order that you're coloring images in with. So when I'm confronted with the problem of which do I color first, the light color or the dark color, I would probably color the light color first. Now, it doesn't always work out perfectly, but that's how art is made. So let's see, this looks pretty good. Nice, dense, opaque, royal blue. And I was able to get my pencil all the way down and use it effectively so that I can extend my working life of that pencil, which is important because many times you run out of pencil before you run out of artwork. Now,